My final memory was the sterile beep of a hospital monitor and David's cruel laughter as he signed the papers pulling my life support. Then I opened my eyes. It was 3 years earlier. He thought he had won, but this time I held the pen and his destruction awaited. Gasping for air, my hands clawed at the Egyptian cotton sheets. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse on Fifth Avenue, blinding me for a fraction of a second. I wasn't in the grim, gray room of St. Jude's palliative care ward. There were no IV lines taped to the bruised veins in my arms, and the suffocating scent of bleach and impending death had been replaced by the expensive, woody notes of David's signature cologne, Santal 33. I sat up, my chest heaving, staring at my perfectly manicured hands. They were full of life, not the skeletal claws that had weakly tried to push him away just moments, or rather, 3 years ago. Footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. The bedroom door pushed open, and there he was, David Mercer. He looked exactly as he had on the morning of the 14th of May, 2023. His dark hair was perfectly styled, a crisp white Tom Ford shirt unbuttoned at the collar, holding a tray with a single espresso and a single red rose. It was his signature move, the grand romantic gesture designed to soften me up before he asked for something massive. "Morning, beautiful," he murmured, flashing that perfectly practiced, asymmetrical smile that used to make my heart flutter. Now, it just made bile rise in my throat. Big day today. Are you ready to make history together? History. Yes, that was his word for it. Today was the day I was supposed to transfer $2 million from my late father's trust fund into Mercer Innovations as seed capital. In my past life, I had signed the papers with stars in my eyes, believing his promises of a shared empire and an unbreakable marriage. I hadn't known that the moment the ink dried, he would begin systematically draining my accounts, isolating me from my friends, and funneling company resources into a secret life with his executive assistant, Chloe Bennett. I hadn't known that when the stress finally triggered my autoimmune disease, he would lock me away in a facility, bribe the doctors to declare me incompetent, and seize total control of my family's estate. "I'm awake," I managed to say, forcing my facial muscles to relax. I took the espresso from his hands, making sure my fingers brushed his. He felt warm, solid, completely unaware that he was standing in front of a ghost. "Just give me a moment to shower, David. I want to look perfect for our meeting at the bank." "Take your time, Nora," he said, kissing my forehead. "My lawyer, Richard, is meeting us at 11. I love you." "I love you too," I lied, the words tasting like ash. As soon as the door clicked shut behind him, I bolted to the master bathroom and locked it. I gripped the edges of the marble sink, staring at my reflection. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes wide and terrifyingly alive. This wasn't a dream. The universe, in some twisted stroke of poetic justice, had hit rewind. I had been reborn into the exact moment my life had originally derailed. I turned on the shower, letting the hot water mask the sound of my ragged breathing, and grabbed my phone. I didn't have much time. If I simply canceled the transfer, David would know something was wrong. He was a manipulator of the highest order. If he sensed I was pulling away, he would pivot, play the victim, and find another way to bleed me dry. No, simply walking away wasn't enough. Not for what he did to me. I didn't just want my money safe. I wanted to watch the life he valued above all else crumble to dust in his hands. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for my father's old wealth manager, a ruthless, old money shark named Gregory Sterling. No, Gregory Pierce. Gregory despised David. In my first life, I had ignored Gregory's warnings, dismissing him as a cynical old man holding on to my father's outdated ideals. Now, I knew he was my only lifeline. Pierce speaking. The gruff voice answered on the second ring. "Gregory, it's Nora," I said, my voice steady, stripped of the naive sweetness I usually carried. "I need you to execute a phantom corporate structure. Immediately. The $2 million for Mercer Innovations? It's not coming from my personal trust anymore. I need you to funnel it through an offshore holding company, Apex Capital, and I need the terms restructured from an equity investment to a mezzanine loan. Put a poison pill in the contract. If he misses a single growth metric, Apex has the right to immediately recall the debt and seize all intellectual property. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Nora, is this a joke? You're supposed to sign the equity transfer in 2 hours. I am not joking, Gregory. David thinks he's getting an angel investor. Instead, he's getting a loan shark. Can you have the paperwork ready by 11? I could practically hear the shark smiling. I always knew your father's daughter was in there somewhere. It will be ready. I hung up, stepping into the steaming shower. The water washed away the lingering phantom pain of my hospital bed. David wanted an empire. I was going to give him the keys to the castle, but I would make sure the foundation was made of dynamite. He thought he was playing a love-struck fool. He didn't realize he was dealing with a woman who had already attended her own funeral. The conference room at First National Bank was freezing, exactly as I remembered it. David sat next to me, his knee bouncing with barely contained excitement. Across from us sat his lawyer, a weasel-faced man named Bradley Thorne. Wait, Bradley Hayes. Next to Bradley was Gregory Pierce, looking completely unreadable in his bespoke charcoal suit. So, to clarify, Bradley said, adjusting his glasses, Nora's trust will no longer be the direct source of the capital? David whipped his head to look at me, his charming smile faltering for a microsecond. Nora? What is he talking about? I placed a gentle, reassuring hand on his knee. Don't worry, darling. Gregory and I had a long talk this morning. Because of some obscure tax liabilities attached to my father's estate, directly transferring the funds would trigger a massive audit. We found a workaround. An international investment firm, Apex Capital, is going to front the $2 million on my behalf. Apex Capital? David frowned, his calculating brain working overtime. I've never heard of them. And what are their terms? We agreed on a 20% equity stake for your contribution. Gregory slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany table. Apex doesn't want equity, Mr. Mercer. They prefer debt. It's a mezzanine loan, $2 million, dispersed today. In exchange, they take no equity, meaning you retain 100% ownership of your company. David's eyes lit up. Absolute ownership. It was his ultimate fantasy. In my past life, my 20% stake had been a constant thorn in his side until he managed to legally dilute my shares and force me out. The prospect of owning Mercer Innovations entirely without having to answer to a board was too tempting for him to resist. And the catch? Bradley asked suspiciously, skimming the documents. Standard performance clauses, Gregory lied smoothly, tapping the paper. Quarterly growth metrics must be met. If Mercer Innovations fails to hit the targets, Apex has the right to call in the loan. But, given your aggressive projections, David, hitting those metrics should be a walk in the park. David looked at me. I offered him a bright, trusting smile. It's entirely up to you, David. I just wanted to make sure you got your money today without the IRS breathing down our necks. If you believe in your company as much as I do, this is perfect. His ego was his biggest blind spot. He couldn't admit, especially in front of other men, that his projections were fabricated. He puffed out his chest, picked up the Mont Blanc pen I had gifted him for his birthday, and signed on the dotted line. He didn't read the fine print. He didn't see the clause that stated if the company's valuation dropped by even a fraction, the debt would instantly compound at a predatory interest rate. I had just handed him a ticking time bomb, and he had tied it directly to his own chest. 3 weeks later, Mercer Innovations threw a lavish launch party at the Bellevue Country Club. The champagne was flowing, the string quartet was playing, and David was holding court in the center of the room, playing the brilliant, self-made tech visionary. I stood near the bar, sipping sparkling water, watching the performance with detached amusement. He looks like he's on top of the world, a voice purred beside me. I turned to see Chloe Bennett. She was wearing a sleek, backless emerald dress that left very little to the imagination. In my first life, I thought she was just a dedicated employee. I had even invited her to our wedding. Now, I noticed the subtle things. The way her eyes lingered on David's mouth, The way she angled her body toward him from across the room, the proprietary smirk she wore when she looked at me. "He does," I agreed, my tone friendly. "He's worked so hard for this." Chloe took a sip of her martini. "He has. We both have. The late nights at the office. You really have no idea what it takes to build something like this from the ground up, Nora. It requires a certain intimacy with the work." The disrespect was palpable. She was testing the waters, rubbing her secret in my face. The old Nora would have felt inadequate, shrinking back into the shadows. The reborn Nora wanted to laugh. "I'm sure it does," I said, leaning in slightly, "which is why I'm so glad David has someone like you to handle the operational stresses, especially with the new Apex Capital oversight. I heard their compliance officers are absolutely brutal." Chloe's smirk faltered. "Compliance officers? Oh, David didn't tell you?" I feigned innocent surprise. Apex Capital has full auditing privileges. Every expense, every dinner, every late-night hotel booking on the company card is monitored. They are incredibly strict about frivolous spending. I'd hate for your hard work to be derailed by an audit. I watched the color drain from her face. She and David had been using the company credit line to fund their weekend getaways to Aspen. In my past life, I hadn't found out about the embezzled funds until the divorce proceedings, when it was far too late. Now, she realized the golden goose had a camera strapped to its neck. "Excuse me," Chloe muttered, turning sharply and practically marching toward David. I watched them from a distance. David leaned down to whisper something in her ear, expecting a flirtatious exchange, but Chloe was tense. She spoke rapidly, her manicured finger jabbing the air. David's confident posture stiffened. He looked across the room at me, a flicker of genuine panic in his eyes. I raised my glass to him, smiling the sweet, ignorant smile of a devoted fiancé. The first crack in his perfect life had just formed, and I had the hammer ready for the next blow. 6 months dissolved into a blur of meticulously calculated sabotage. To the outside world, I was still the glowing bride-to-be, happily sampling vanilla fondant cakes and debating the merits of imported peonies for our upcoming summer wedding. Behind closed doors, I was the architect of David's living hell. The beauty of the Apex Capital trap was its slow, suffocating nature. The mezzanine loan required Mercer Innovations to hit a rigid 22% quarterly revenue growth. In my past life, David had hidden his stagnant sales by continuously dipping into my personal accounts, forging my signature to pad the company's bottom line. Now, separated from my cash flow by Gregory Pierce's ironclad legal firewall, David had to actually perform. And David, for all his tailored suits and smooth charisma, was a woefully incompetent CEO. The physical toll of his impending failure was delightful to watch. By November, the expensive woody notes of his Santal 33 cologne were frequently overpowered by the sour stench of stale scotch and cold sweat. He stopped sleeping. His perfect, asymmetrical smile devolved into a nervous twitch. I played my part flawlessly, rubbing his tense shoulders and offering empty platitudes about how much I believed in his genius, all while secretly reviewing the devastating audit reports Gregory forwarded to my encrypted tablet. To accelerate his downfall, I hired a private investigator, a former corporate espionage specialist named Wyatt Henderson. Wyatt was expensive, discreet, and ruthless. Within 3 weeks, Wyatt handed me a thick file detailing exactly how David was trying to plug the holes in his sinking ship. Desperate to meet the Apex metrics, David had started cooking the books, creating phantom invoices from dummy corporations to inflate his revenue. Even better, Wyatt discovered the lease for a luxury penthouse in Tribeca, rented under Mercer Innovations as a corporate retreat, but exclusively occupied by Chloe Bennett. Armed with this information, I didn't confront him. Screaming matches were for victims. I was a predator. Instead, I anonymously forwarded the Tribeca lease agreement and a detailed map of the fraudulent invoices directly to Apex Capital's compliance department. The fallout was spectacular. I was sitting in our living room, innocently addressing wedding invitations, when David burst through the front door. His tie was loosened, his face the color of wet ash. He looked like a man who had just watched his own executioner sharpen the axe. They froze our operating accounts, he gasped, leaning heavily against the console table. He didn't even say hello. Apex. They initiated a surprise forensic audit this morning. They locked me out of the company servers. Nora, I set down my calligraphy pen, widening my eyes in perfectly feigned horror. David, what? Why would they do that? You told me you hit the quarterly projections. I did! I mean, we were close, he stammered, pacing the Persian rug like a trapped animal. There must be a misunderstanding, some algorithmic error on their end, but they're demanding immediate repayment of the principal if the audit turns up irregularities. $2 million, Nora, plus the predatory interest. If I don't clear this up by Friday, they're going to seize the company. They'll take my patents. They'll take everything. He stopped pacing and dropped to his knees in front of my chair, grabbing my hands. His palms were clammy. This was the moment he had always relied on, the moment where he played the desperate, misunderstood genius, and I played the loyal, bottomless bank account. Nora, baby, I need your help, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I need a bridge loan, just $1.5 million to buy out Apex's position and get them off my back. You can pull it from your trust. We're getting married in 2 months. What's yours is mine anyway, right? Think of our future. In my previous life, I would have signed the paperwork through tears of sympathy, terrified of seeing him in pain. Today, I looked down at his pathetic, begging face and felt absolutely nothing but a cold, hard thrill. Oh, David, I whispered, gently stroking his hair while carefully pulling my hands free from his grip. You know I would do anything for you. But Gregory tied up my trust in a 5-year irrevocable bond when we set up the Apex deal. Remember? It was the only way to avoid the tax liabilities. I literally don't have access to the capital. I'm completely locked out. The color completely drained from his face, leaving him looking like a corpse. Locked out? You have nothing liquid? Just my allowance, I lied smoothly. Maybe a few $1,000s. But David, surely your executive assistant can help you organize a defense? Chloe seems so capable. I'm sure she kept pristine records of your expenses. At the mention of Chloe's name, David flinched as if I had struck him. He knew exactly what the auditors were going to find in Chloe's files. The secret trips, the luxury gifts, the Tribeca apartment. The net wasn't just tightening. It was lined with razor wire. He stumbled to his feet, muttering incoherently about needing to call his lawyers, and practically fled the apartment. That evening, Wyatt sent me a new batch of audio recordings. It was a wiretap from David's office. I poured myself a glass of vintage Bordeaux, sat by the fireplace, and hit play. The sound of shattered glass echoed from my phone, followed by Chloe's hysterical screaming. "You promised me we were safe!" Chloe shrieked on the recording. The auditors interrogated me for 3 hours, David. 3 hours. They know about the apartment. They know about the Aspen flights. They told me I could face federal wire fraud charges if I don't testify that you ordered me to fake the invoices. Keep your voice down, David hissed, his usual velvet tone shredded into panic. I'll fix it. I just need to find another investor. I'll throw Nora under the bus if I have to. Claims she mismanaged the initial funds. Just don't talk to the feds, Chloe. You're going to throw the heiress under the bus? Chloe laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You're delusional. You're broke, David, and I'm not going to prison for a broke man. I took a slow sip of my wine, letting the rich flavor coat my tongue. The rats were finally eating each other. The trap was fully sprung. All that was left was the execution. Friday night was the annual Silicon Valley Innovators Gala at the Waldorf Astoria. It was the premier networking event of the year. A shimmering ocean of sequined gowns, bespoke tuxedos, and ruthless venture capitalists. Months ago, David had purchased a platinum table, intending to use the gala as his victory lap to announce Mercer Innovations' fictional expansion into European markets. Now, it was going to be his public graveyard. I wore a stunning crimson Oscar de la Renta gown, looking every inch the supportive billionaire heiress. David, however, looked like a walking ghost. His tuxedo hung slightly loose on his frame, his eyes darting frantically around the ballroom, as if expecting a firing squad to emerge from the floral arrangements. He had spent the last 48 hours ignoring calls from Apex Capital, operating under the childish delusion that if he just secured one massive client tonight, he could negotiate his way out of the fraud charges. "Just smile," he muttered to me through gritted teeth as a photographer approached our table. "Jonathan Royce is here from Vanguard Tech. If I can corner him and pitch the new algorithm, Vanguard's backing will scare Apex off. I just need 10 minutes with him." "I'm right behind you, darling," I said, offering a dazzling smile to the camera flash. David smoothed his lapels, took a deep breath to summon whatever fake charisma he had left, and marched across the ballroom toward Jonathan Royce, a towering, silver-haired titan of the tech industry. I watched David extend his hand, flashing that practiced, asymmetrical smile. I also watched Jonathan Royce look at David's hand as if it were coated in toxic waste. Royce didn't reach out. Instead, he leaned in, said something brief and sharp, and turned his back completely, leaving David stranded in the middle of the crowded floor. I knew exactly what Royce had said, because earlier that afternoon, I had Wyatt Henderson personally deliver a flash drive to Royce's head of security. The drive contained every forged invoice and fraudulent projection David had ever created. Before David could recover from the public snub, the heavy oak doors of the ballroom swung open. Gregory Pierce strode into the room, flanked by two imposing men in dark suits and a uniformed NYPD officer. The string quartet's music seemed to falter, the lively chatter of the room dying down as the imposing group cut a straight path through the sea of billionaires, heading directly for David. David froze, his champagne flute slipping from his fingers and shattering against the marble floor. "David Mercer," Gregory announced, his booming voice carrying easily over the sudden silence of the crowd. He pulled a thick stack of legal documents from his briefcase. "'Cause immediate. As the legal representative of Apex Capital, I am formally serving you with a notice of default and immediate asset seizure. Furthermore, due to the discovery of extensive financial fraud and embezzlement, all intellectual property, physical assets, and capital associated with Mercer Innovations are hereby repossessed by my client." Whispers erupted across the ballroom like a wildfire. Cell phones were suddenly raised, recording the spectacle. David's face was completely drained of color. He looked frantically at the police officer, then at Gregory, and finally, his desperate eyes locked onto me. He lunged toward our table, pushing past a startled waiter. Nora, do something! Call your lawyers! Tell them this is a mistake!" I stood up slowly, smoothing the front of my crimson gown. I picked up my clutch and walked toward him, my heels clicking methodically against the floor. I didn't look scared. I didn't look sympathetic. I looked perfectly, terrifyingly calm. "There's no mistake, David," I said, my voice quiet but carrying enough steel to make him stop in his tracks. "What are you talking about?" he begged, his facade completely shattering. Tears of genuine panic welled in his eyes. "They're stealing my company, Nora. We're ruined." I stepped intimately close to him, so close I could smell the sour panic radiating from his pores. I leaned up, my lips hovering just inches from his ear. "They aren't stealing anything," I whispered, ensuring only he could hear the words that would end his life as he knew it. "Apex Capital isn't a foreign investment firm, David. It's a shell company. I own it. I have owned it since the morning we signed the papers at the bank. I am Apex Capital." I felt his entire body go rigid. He stopped breathing. He pulled back slightly, staring at me as if I had suddenly transformed into a monster. "You set me up? The audit, the metrics." "I gave you exactly what you wanted," I replied, my voice dropping to a glacial chill. "Total control, and you hung yourself with it. Did you really think you could drain my accounts? Parade your mistress through a penthouse bought with my father's money, and lock me away when I became inconvenient? Did you really think I wouldn't wake up?" "Lock you away?" he stammered, true confusion mixing with his terror. "Mistress? Nora? What are you talking about? Are you crazy?" He didn't remember the hospital. He didn't remember pulling my life support. To him, this was a sudden, psychotic betrayal. To me, it was perfect justice. The fact that he didn't understand the full depth of my vengeance made it all the sweeter. He was going to spend the rest of his life in a concrete cell, wondering why the woman who worshipped him had meticulously dismantled his soul. "Officer," I said, stepping back and raising my voice for the room to hear, "I believe Mr. Mercer's former assistant, Chloe Bennett, has already provided her statement to the authorities regarding the wire fraud." The officer nodded. "Yes, ma'am. There's a warrant for his arrest." David tried to run, but Gregory's security men grabbed his arms before he made it 3 steps. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed sharply over the stunned silence of the gala. As they dragged him away, screaming my name, begging for a second chance, I didn't look back. I turned, picked up a fresh glass of champagne from a passing tray, and walked out into the cool Manhattan night. The heavy doors of the Waldorf Astoria closed behind me, cutting off the sounds of David's screaming. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I took a deep breath of crisp air and felt nothing but absolute, unbreakable peace. I traded my toxic love for my own soul, and the view from the top is breathtaking. If you loved this story of ultimate payback, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their worth, and subscribe for more real-life drama.